Hi, this is Chris Newson. Welcome to the Root Cause Analysis podcast, where we'll take our listeners right to the heart of the important EHS issues. We're coming to you live from Woodland Grange, a conference and hotel venue in the Midlands. In this episode of the Root Cause Analysis podcast, we're focusing on sustainability. This is an area where we get a lot of questions from our members. There's a lot of confusion about what sustainability is really about in business and how you can make it work. We thought it would be useful to invite a sustainability director from one of our biggest members to come and talk about how she's making it work in her company. So we now welcome Louise Harry to the Root Cause Analysis podcast. Louise is the Director of Sustainability and EHS for Siemens, Great Britain and Ireland. Louise leads on sustainability, environmental protection and health management at Siemens. She started at Motorola in 1995 and has worked in various global EHS and sustainability roles until joining Siemens in 2018. Welcome to the podcast, Louise.
Thank you so much for the invite, Chris.
No problem, and thank you sincerely for giving up your time to be here.
My pleasure.
So we've got a number of questions. The focus really is around sort of sustainability. I think our members will find your insights into that area particularly useful. So not too many questions, hopefully. We'll start with number one. So perhaps most importantly, tell us a bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today.
So I was described recently as a purist by somebody at an EHS conference that I was at, because I've always worked within EHS and sustainability. And that actually started in my higher education. So I have a bachelor's degree in environmental health. And I chose that course because I'd had these thoughts of being a marine biologist as a teenager, because I was always interested in the natural world around me, and perhaps this sense of purpose of conservation, but had realised that, perhaps a career with something that was a little more tangible might be more sensible. So ended up, studying environmental health at university, which was a really broad-based degree. So huge amounts of occupational safety, but also very heavy at the time on things like environmental economics and policy making. And it didn't just focus on the UK, it was looking very much at the situation throughout the European Union at the time. So it was at the time that the six-pack was coming in,
so
the early 90s, so the introduction of risk assessment into our world. These days we all think of that, but this was quite a new concept at that point. So some really hands-on studying of I suppose theoretical safety that would become very much day-to-day safety, but also those really important elements around things like pollution prevention, and as I said, just good policy making and lots on law, obviously. So that was a great start. And I was lucky enough to do an internship with Motorola, and that then led immediately, coming out of university, to a graduate scheme opportunity as what they called it, an EHS engineering role at the time in a factory in Swindon. So manufacturing is probably still my first love. It's where I started my career, in a surface mount factory in Swindon, and I'm always very happy to walk back into that environment today, which is actually why I sort of came full circle to Siemens. But during my time at Motorola then, it was that, practical application of a lot of things that I'd learnt. But it was at a time when safety particularly was changing. That was a great opportunity, because I was fresh into the workplace and didn't have, pre-existing concepts of how we should do safety management. So, I came with a very risk-based approach. And also a management systems approach, which again was pretty new at that time. So I was able to progress really well within Motorola to sort of becoming, I suppose, a management systems expert. And that then led to a sort of Europe, Middle East, Africa role, and then also a global role with the kind of internal audit team within the EHS function. So, I was really fortunate early in my career to travel globally to manufacturing facilities in very different environments and understand the role that culture plays.
Sure,
So into semiconductor factories in France, where it was totally reasonable to have a few glasses of wine with your lunch, in a wooden factory prefab and just, you know, the types of scaffolding perhaps that are used in different parts of the country, because that's the expertise they had. So, you know, it was this, I was a sponge, you know, learning so much at that time, and that was brilliant. And then I chose to take a role that was more UK based. So I left Motorola and joined what was actually for about 1 month still called One-to-One, which was the mobile phone company that became T-Mobile, and then eventually became EE as we know it today, and then worked in various roles, either within safety or purely within environment, or a bit of everything, and then ultimately by the time I'd left that organisation and function had morphed into a safety and sustainability function. So it was really the beginning of the transition into, I guess, the sustainability type functions we see today. But I think, you know, through that time at EE, had some great opportunities where, you know, particularly when we brought together T-Mobile and Orange, you had this amazing opportunity to actually rip up and start over, because you were bringing together, while two businesses operating in the same field, they were culturally very different. So it was a really innovative time in saying, actually, what works for the business we're going to have tomorrow, and let's not look at what we've always done. You know, mobile telecoms is relatively young still. If I look at the age of Siemens and other businesses, you know, it's still quite a young, agile industry. And I think because of that, it was always very willing to rip up and start over. So I became quite adept at doing that within EHS as well, you know, saying, are we still doing the right things for our customers, who, you know, mostly are our employees and perhaps our service partners, in doing things the right way. And we started to focus on different elements. So, you know, the shift from perhaps just purely health into well-being during that time as well. You know, so I think lots of our functions have morphed over the last 30 years that I've been working.
And some of that stuff you're talking about there, I mean, it might be second nature to some EHS people today, but in that, you know, early 90s, and you talked about the six-pack coming in and so on, that was brand new stuff.
Totally new. Totally. So when I did my internship at Motorola, it was a summer internship, and my job was to write the risk assessments for the whole factory. Because there wasn't a single one, because it's not how we had managed safety previously in the UK. You know, we had great safety management, but it was done much more through process, you know, not really looking at what mattered and what needed to be managed. So, you know, given the opportunity, and that was what I did, machine by machine, line by line, area by area in the factory, just looking at the risk.
A great way to learn. What
amazing
you're doing,
way to learn.
At your stage in your career at that
absolutely,
point.
Absolutely.
And I just think it's something clearly that we're very unlikely to ever experience again, that massive change that came with the EU in 1992. So just because people nowadays in safety haven't been through that, maybe. So what was it like trying to, you know, start risk assessments in a company where that concept didn't exist? Because Health and Safety at Work Act doesn't talk about risk assessments. You know, so
it does
what was it like, that bit?
It was interesting because a lot of people ultimately just wanted to get on and do their jobs the way they had done them.
Right.
And there weren't a huge amount of topics that we identified that had never been thought about. But actually what we were able to do is say, you know, that clearly is managed well, so it's no longer a risk. You know, there is no residual risk. So let's switch the focus to where there is residual risk. So it was more about trying to get people to understand the concept of managing where risk sits, not where you think it sits. You know, because you might look at, you know, perhaps a forklift operation and know it's inherently risky, but actually if everybody's had their medical, they're trained, you've got all of the right, you know, protection in place, it's not a huge risk day to day. Whereas perhaps, you know, use of certain types of, you know, lead containing solder were a much bigger risk, you know, with the lead, you know, the solder fume and, you know, the health implications of that. So it enabled the business to change focus, but equally it required a lot of, I would say, time, generosity of spirit, somewhat, you know, sometimes explaining, but also it taught me a really early lesson, which is actually if you learn your business and what your business is doing, you become able to enable as a function, and you're not there just to say no. And that is, you know, I have taken that right the way through my career. I'm not here to tell people no. What I want to do is say, I think I can help you do it better. All the time. So it's learning and that generosity of time and curiosity actually for what may not feel like it's an inherently EHS topic, but actually it really matters to the business. So let's figure that out and see where we fit in with that and where we can support and enable.
And I don't know about you, but I think a lot of times you're talking to people as an EHS person, and their preconception is one of negativity, and you're going to stop me doing this or that.
And I'd say that was much
a low bar.
Yeah, and 20 years ago it was a really low bar, Chris. I think it's better now. I think COVID helped a lot of our more traditional EHS practitioners because, you know, I think most EHS departments were really able to demonstrate their value during COVID. You know, about how we can actually work at pace, keep, you know, the businesses operational and safe and well all at the same time.
And bringing things up to speed then, or up to date. So you started at Siemens in 2018.
2018. So that was, I guess, there were a couple of things that play for me then. One, it's a great opportunity. You know, I had come across Siemens at various points through my career, always been a sort of brand that I had admired. It was also an opportunity to move back into the manufacturing and engineering space, which I missed a little bit. You know, I, as I said, started my career in a factory, really enjoyed that type of environment. So it was a great opportunity to get back to, you know, that sort of workplace. And it was just, a great opportunity to come in. Siemens at the time were perhaps looking to modernise slightly their EHS management, and it just felt like a really, good opportunity for me. And it is brilliant, you know. I'm approaching 6 years and it's absolutely flown by. And again, it's developed, you know, I'm actually on my third role since I've joined Siemens. So when I first joined, I was EHS director. I then had a spell doing an international occupational safety role where we had some sort of improvement programs, particularly around contractors. So I went and did a spell with the global team. And then about 2 years ago came back full-time into the UK and took on sustainability as well as the EHS functions. I sit as part of the executive leadership team in the UK, so I'm also looking at some of our strategic priorities. So we have a priority called Empowered People, which is all about engagement and empowerment and how the business really ticks. So I'm the strategic lead for that as well. And there's a huge overlap in that kind of cultural piece of why sustainability and EHS work, why people feel well at work if they're engaged and empowered as well.
And that really, you know, we haven't rehearsed this, that leads really well into my next question, which is, you know, I think there's a lot of confusion around this word sustainability, and honestly, I'm sure you've come across it. You talk to some people, and sustainability is interchangeable with environmental management, and it's clearly much more than that. So, you know, you talked about their culture and people and bringing them along with you. I mean, how would you, you know, in terms of helping our members understand what sustainability is about, how would you sort of define it? What is it to you?
So I always think when you're starting out in this space, it's really good to go back to, if you like, the imperative of why we focus on sustainability these days, right? And actually, in its simplest form, you know, if we look at the definition of sustainable development, we talk about, you know, enabling future generations to live well, and for us to live well without compromising the future. So, you know, to me, it's about protecting our planet, it's about protecting our people so that people will live well in the future, right? If you've protected the planet and your people, hopefully there's a good future for everybody in that, and that's really purposeful. And, you know, finding purpose in my work has always been really important to me, and honestly, this piece about protecting the planet and people is incredibly purposeful, so I really enjoyed that. But I think then if you take that deeper within your organisation, you're really trying to understand those sustainability issues, you know, within environmental protection, social sustainability and governance, and what your business is doing that does affect the planet, how it does affect people, the societies and ecosystems around you, and then really trying to identify, well, what's positive and negative, because of course it could be a positive as well as a negative. It's not all, you know, a downward slope. And I think, you know, for most people then, what's really, really important is to really demonstrate that collaborative approach, because you're really looking at systems thinking at this point. You know, you're not operating your sustainability function in a silo. You know, so EHS is a vital pillar of sustainability, as is, you know, human resources and people and organisation. You know, it's actually made up of multiple strands. So in some ways you can define it in the way that suits your business. But I think most people, you know, it can heavily focus on decarbonisation, the journey to net zero, and it is absolutely about that. And for Siemens, that's really vital, actually, you know, because that's what we deliver into the wider ecosystem and the wider world. But that is only one part of it. It's just one part of it. So it's recognising, it's systems thinking, an ecosystem approach, but at the heart with people and the planet. About that's your key considerations.
Perfect. And well, like I said in the question, I do think there is this misunderstanding that it's just about one small element, like you said, which is the environment. And it's almost sustainability sits above health and safety, environment, everything.
Absolutely. You know? And it's not about topics having precedence over each other. It's just recognising that actually there are lots of key elements within all of the pillars of sustainability that really matter. And if you're going to do the right thing, then you have to focus on a lot of topics. It can't just be perhaps, you know, a journey to net zero, and it can't just be on, you know, perhaps equity. It has to be a wholesale approach to doing the right thing as a business. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think just a very small item there is, you know, if you think about your title, you know, it's got the word sustainability in, and really simple as any health and safety manager or EHS manager or whatever, that sort of area should have sustainability in there, in my opinion, because that's what it's all about, or an element of it. You know?
And it is, and you know, and it is recognising that your role is to coordinate and collaborate in that role, because actually, you know, it's difficult, you know, for one person, even within a small business, to deliver all of those topics.
Absolutely.
You know, it requires collaboration with everybody. So I think that's the key part to it as well.
Okay, and there is a question about smaller businesses later, so that would be good. You mentioned at the beginning there about organisational culture, and you know, and I've said, and we've sort of agreed, I think that there is a bit of a misunderstanding about what sustainability is. How have you brought the organisation with you in terms of culture and understanding sustainability?
I think at Siemens, if I'm honest, it's been just an utter privilege, right? Because Siemens is, you know, it's a really old business, 175 years old in the UK. And what was fascinating for me when I joined the business, I found this incredible leaflet, and I think it was from about 1860, where Sir William Siemens, who was one of the original Siemens brothers who's founded the business in the UK, had written about the importance of the welfare of his workers.
Wow.
Right, in 1860.
Yeah, you wouldn't imagine that.
Just amazing. And actually that thread of doing the right thing runs through Siemens and always has. So I will honestly tell you, it's a privilege and a sweet spot to be doing a sustainability role for Siemens at this point, you know, in history, because, you know, we deliver amazing products, right, to our customers. It's very easy for all of our employees to understand, you know, the benefit that Siemens brings to the wider world, and the benefits, the sustainable benefits that we bring as a business. So sometimes it's just more about coordination. I never feel like I really have to sell this as a topic. You know, there's elements of it that we just need to ensure that people understand why that particular part matters, you know, and why we have to focus on certain elements of it. But yeah, it has been, and I think at the moment with education and, you know, the noise that you see perhaps in the media, everyone understands there is an imperative, you know, around sustainability topics, that we have to act the right way. I think as well, it's important actually that businesses consider their role. You know, there's a lot of politics at the moment. We want to stay focused on policy, and I think that's important for all businesses, regardless of size and organisation and culture, remain focused on what they can actually do. And I think, you know, if you think about the culture of a business and what matters, it's very simply about your conduct. It is about making sure you are doing the right thing within your business, you know, in all of those topic areas that touch. So for me, that's the bit about organisational culture, you know, around sustainability. It's about conduct, it's about ethics, and it's about doing the right thing.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, we've had people on the podcast before talk about you know, culture from a health and safety only point of view, which is great, and an organisational culture. And it is, like you said, whatever you're talking about, it is doing the right thing.
It is,
and for people
and that matters, Chris. And that it really matters. You know, to me, it really matters. And of course, for people to do that and do that well, they need to know their role. Yeah. So they have to have, you know, clarity of purpose at a very, you know, hands-on level, but then clarity of purpose at an organisational level. And actually, if you feel that like there's common purpose, that's when things really start to fly, because everyone feels empowered to deliver the right thing and to do the right thing to deliver as well. You know, and I think those organisations with just good culture and organisational culture, you know, you'll generally find they're healthier, they're safer,
no doubt,
because everyone understands the concept.
But when you broaden that away from health and safety to now, you were talking about, you know, social value and doing the right thing in those areas. You know, if that's genuine for you, like we know it is for Siemens, then they're doing that and it's nice and visible. But if in other organisations, let's say you're pretending to do sustainability, you know, it's very hard to pretend to be socially beneficial.
I agree.
So, you know, it's simple. You know, the health and safety example of leading by example is you are following the rules as a senior director. You know, you've got to demonstrate that same thing in terms of social value as an organisation.
Absolutely.
So it makes it, you know, it's for an organisation like yours, that's what you do anyway. For others, maybe it's harder. Okay, we'll move on with a bit more of a scientific detail type question here. So, do you think that organisations currently struggle to measure sustainability? And, you know, any advice you've got for them in all the work you've done?
And measuring success is tricky, right? It is really tricky, but I would generally say you can measure what you can achieve success if you're measuring. Okay. So so knowing the right things to measure within sustainability really matters. I think key to that is looking at the risks and opportunities of your business. You know, because all businesses of all sizes have the ability to look at, well, what's risky, but where might there be an opportunity for us? And then you effectively say, okay, do I have gaps in how we're working on this topic? Or actually, is there an opportunity we're missing on this topic? And you have to decide what matters to you as an organisation. Now, you know, for Siemens, because a lot of what we are delivering is a journey to decarbonisation. Decarbonisation and resource efficiency are hugely important for us. So the E pillar is really what we're delivering out into the world. So we have lots of focus on measuring, you know, our own internal impact on what we're doing, but also measuring what perhaps we're doing in terms of customer enabled and avoided emissions. So, you know, the business globally has done a huge amount of work on that. So working out effectively what is our footprint, you know, from our own operations, but then working out, well, what's the handprint we're delivering into the world? Because sometimes you might have to accept that you're going to have an environmental impact for your business, but actually what you deliver into the wider world is an enabled and avoided emissions. You know, for Siemens, it's about 16 times the size of our footprint. The best we can measure currently, that's probably a conservative estimate. So at that point, while we're still focused on reducing our own impact, We also know that sometimes we might have to sacrifice a little bit on that because we can deliver a much bigger impact to our customers and the ecosystems around us by doing what we do.
Okay. Yes, makes sense.
Yeah, so I think, that would be my advice is, to other organisations is define what matters, define where you can have impact, look at the risks and opportunities and start measuring, because the minute you've got that line in the sand, you then start to work on improvement.
Yeah, that I understand. And what just a further question, if that's okay, in terms of the social side, of sustainability, I always think that is particularly difficult to measure anyway. And, what do you do with that measure? And because in a way, some people think if you publicise that too much, you're almost sort of, it's
sustainability washing. It used to be greenwashing, but you're absolutely right. But there are some really good organisations out there that can help you with kind of assessing. So we participate in something called B4SI. So that's looking at, your business, how you are, and it's not just about, where you're giving money, it's about, time in kind effectively. So, we have a big focus on, if you like, impactful volunteering. So, we have a very skilled workforce within Siemens in lots of different ways, So how can those people go out? We give everybody 2 full days of volunteering, so 16 hours a year. Right. How do we go out and actually maximise that? So, for instance, in my team, we had one of our safety guys go out and do a risk assessments on a hydropower, a charitable hydropower system that was being set up near us. We have other people that will go out, the engineers, and teach a class on engineering in a primary school. So, it's not just about serving your community, it's sometimes about sharing the skills and the knowledge that we have within Siemens. So that's a really great way of, demonstrating and actually a very measurable way of showing social impact. It's also about, the work that we would do around sort of very early stage skills. So, diversity is really important to us as an organisation. Historically, we've been a very male heavy industry, manufacturing, engineering. So we're quite focused on, attempting to kind of, level that playing field and encourage diversity of thought. And one of the ways that we do that is by looking at, how do we improve the talent pool that's available? So we do a lot of work with, junior schools, because there's a lot of evidence that shows children are making quite defined choices by the age of 10. Yeah. So you have to kind of go early into some of those spaces. We've got a whole connected curriculum with a lot of universities, which is, a really practical application of some of Siemens technology. And again, that all counts. That's all social impact. That's all social impact of using, our status, I suppose, as a bit of an anchor institution, as a big global company, to actually work in those communities and ecosystems. And we don't want people to be left behind, ultimately.
I mean, and that's amazing. I'll just say that because it must be, well, I don't know, I don't work at Siemens, but in a lot of organisations it's difficult to get buy-in to invest money in going out and doing work in the community and allowing people 2 days to volunteer. I can think about some organisations that are, why do we do that?
Well, and let me tell you, so here's another stat. Okay. So at Siemens in UK and Ireland, we are all encouraged to learn for 50 hours a year.
Okay.
So because actually, empowering people and having what we would call a growth mindset really matters. We also know that, to drive a strong agenda in the future, our employees often come and stay a long time. We have to continually learn, upskill, get new skills. So actually, as a company, we're really committed to that learning within the organisation as well. And, sometimes it's healthy competition, but we collectively learn,
Sure.
So within my functions, one Monday afternoon a month, we collectively learn on a topic, and it's brilliant. So that's another way that you can then demonstrate, how you're perhaps having a wider impact. 'Cause it's not always on topics that feel, intrinsic to the role you're doing. You can learn on a lot of other matters that really perhaps would affect the Siemens ecosystem, perhaps.
And that's really showing I know it's not the reason you're doing it, but that's really showing investment in your people.
Absolutely.
And you can see what you said there about people stay at Siemens a long time.
Yeah, they
do. You can see why.
Yeah, and and actually that concept of volunteering and sharing learning, that is widely held with a lot of partner organisations that we work with, both customers and suppliers. So that sort of flows through our value chain. We try and encourage that all the way along as well.
Yeah, but that leads to my next question, which I think is going to be a bit of a challenge after we've just said that.
Yeah.
In my view, a lot of smaller organisations are, when I say my view, members that we talk to of SMEs and micro organisations are concerned about sustainability and thinking, well, it's a very grand, big thing. How can I do it? We're only a small SME. So have you got any advice for smaller organisations and what they can do around sustainability? I
do. So, and I think, so if I go straight back to the value chain, what I would particularly encourage, SMEs to do is look at who else is in their value chain with them that would also have an interest. And also, is there somebody like Siemens in your value chain? Because if there is, they will want to work with you on topics. So at the moment, we have projects ongoing with suppliers. So we're working with an organisation called Heart of the City on a sort of sustainability school for some of our really small suppliers so that they can get the skills they need. And Siemens is sort of sponsoring and co-sponsoring some of those businesses to get those skills that they need. We also work with Sustainability Supply Chain School on the same topic where, again, we can encourage people in the value chain to kind of go out and get the skills they need. But equally, if somebody comes to us, we're always happy to share and say, okay, let's take a look and, what can we do to work together? So, we have lots of customers who perhaps are coming to us who have the most amazing sustainable product, and then we will actively work with them, to say, okay, well, how can we help make your business a success? What can we do to help you, scale? Can we adopt some of that technology ourselves? So, and we're always happy to share, our approach, our framework, which is called the degree framework, which sort of sets out, and we can cover that in a bit more detail if you like, about what Siemens is doing, actually very specifically internally. We're always happy to sort of share that learning. So I would say, if you're in sort of the SME space, go out. There are a lot of organisations that, are sponsored by bigger organisations to help make impact, because the value chain really matters. What's scope 1 to me is scope 3 to somebody else and vice versa. So it matters to all of us. So, and go and find perhaps those who are more advanced within your value chain and talk to them.
Well, I think that's, thank you, first of all, for that. I mean, that's a fantastic answer. These things don't always translate into all sizes of organisations, and so sometimes that's a difficult answer. But.
It is, but I also understand, within a small person, the sustainability and EHS and perhaps, human resource, it's all the same person.
That's right,
So there's a huge amount of skills that can feel quite daunting at the start. So being able to draw on resources outside of your business, I think, is a great way to get going with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if any company is doing sustainability properly, like Siemens clearly are, that value chain, that whole value chain is really, it has to be if you're doing sustainability properly. And so for these SMEs, if they ask that question and the answer's we're not doing it, that's a bit of a problem, I would say. So brilliant, great advice, thank you. Okay, so you perhaps touched on it a bit there, but in terms of the last question today, what are, clearly Siemens are doing excellent work in sustainability as you've outlined, but what's next on the horizon? What's the plans going forward?
So at Siemens, so we launched, we've got a long legacy, I would say, within sustainability related topics. I think Siemens launched its first environmental protection department in 1972. I know because I remember its 50th anniversary, a couple of years ago. So there's this long legacy of focusing on the right things. And that evolved to a point where a few years ago we sort of launched what we call our degree framework, and it's a play on the sort of every degree of warming really counts, but for us it's an acronym. So the D is decarbonisation, E, the first E is ethics, G is governance, R is resource efficiency, and then the last two E's are equity and employability. And within that framework, that's really us covering off, ESG, environmental, social and governance topics that form sustainability. And all of those have KPIs attached to them. So, for some of them, it might be things like, have you completed your business conduct guidelines training? What does, the gender diversity look like within your business? What's your absolute carbon emissions? It's a whole range of KPIs, right the way through to actually lost time injury frequency rate within employability. So there's health and safety within there. There's a huge amount of metrics that make up the degree framework for us. So that is now, we're evolving because some of those targets have been met. So we're now in the stage of evolving that, looking at new KPIs that will sit within the framework that, encourage us to sort of move forward on continual improvement. But it does really, focus us around things like, our product design as well. So knowing that we are building and marketing, to customers products that will really help in their own journeys on sustainability as well. And the wide Siemens portfolio, covers healthcare, transport, and then obviously, smart infrastructure and digital industry. So there's a huge amount to go at within there. And there's going to be evolution of that, for a long time to come, because Siemens is well experienced in evolving as a business. So we know that we can't stand still on sustainability. So for us, it's now pushing to the next stage. For me, important topics, in the next sort of 12 months onwards are supply chain and how we really impact on sustainability within our supply chain. So it's things like, we're signed up for real living wage, prompt payment code, these types of things. So how much of that can we instill through our own supply chain? How can we help them on their decarbonisation journey? So that's where we're going next.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah.
Now I'm just prompted to ask a question from that. So I'm just interested in your supply chain.
Yeah.
If you were to get an organisation within your supply chain that says, I don't know if they would say this, but they might say, look, we're genuinely not interested in sustainability and those sort of things. We don't really want to do any of those things you're talking about.
Yeah.
What do you? What's your response?
They're the people I love to go and talk to.
To change their mind?
Not to change their mind, but I would be fascinated, if a business said to us, it's not on my agenda. I'd be genuinely, I would find that an incredibly curious and happy conversation to have with somebody, because I do understand, that for some businesses, ultimately they are a business, and we shouldn't be ashamed of the fact we need to make money to stay alive as a business, because you can't have purpose and impact if you're not around. So you always have to balance it with a pragmatic view of what you're really doing in the world. But I think actually sometimes if you just start to dig with businesses, actually they are very impactful, they just don't realise it. So I always think they're great conversations to go and have.
Excellent.
I mean, I don't think, it's not an out and out no for us. It would that would really be a time when we go, let us help you do that better.
And in essence, as I'm sure that is the point, isn't it? That's the impact that you can have as a large organisation that takes sustainability very seriously on other organisations.
Absolutely, and it's also about. I think it's also about showing the art of the possible to some of those businesses as well. So look, Siemens' answer to the sustainability imperative is the development of industrial technology. Be it, digital twins of whole factories that now exist and are built purely, within the virtual world, because actually we in the virtual can make the real world better. And sometimes as a smaller business, you just don't have access to understanding what possible can be. So again, I think part of our role is to take the art of the possible out and just show how you can use some of this amazing, industrial technology in the metaverse that's coming through and make and bring that to life for smaller businesses as well. Because sometimes what may feel like a really heavy investment can pay off very quickly for them. So particularly in sustainability terms.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I mean, like we said, it's just in real simple terms, it's one organisation. It's very large, but really knows what they're doing having an impact on others.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
And I think it's a wonderful, it's part of our purpose is to do that. It's not just about taking yourself through that change curve. It is about working collaboratively with your whole ecosystem to achieve a better future.
Yeah, that's sustainability.
It is.
Excellent. Well, listen, it's been a real pleasure to chat to you today.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I hope we can talk again.
We can.
Cheers. A great conversation with Louise today and an explanation of some of the sustainability work that she's doing at Siemens. Hopefully it's something that our members can take away and start to implement in their own organisations. Thanks for joining us. Hope you've enjoyed today's show. Make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss out on future episodes, and I'll see you on the next one.